One of science's greatest concerns for Earth's future is that of the conservation of species diversity. Due to humanity's great demand for products derived from animals, extinction rates are accelerating, and recovering endangered species is challenging governments and conservation. For example, the hammerhead is to the brink of extinction. A scientific publication which tackles a marine case study of contemporary endangered species conservation. The article was published by the prestigious Biology entitled Population of the Marine Sharks. The article aimed to investigate the effectiveness of no-take marine protected areas, otherwise known as MPAs, to improve outcomes for 5 species of mobile reef sharks. The methodology was of individual animals from 36 countries to determine whether the restricted spatial areas of the MPAs was grossly underestimated and was 2.6 times larger than current fishing mortality by 50%. The research ultimately advises that the current size of MPAs is far too small to protect a creature that both lives for decades and is Based on the results array, substantial modifications to the MPAs that are utilised by researchers to help conserve vulnerable species of sea life. The modifications improve the efficiency of conservation of threatened predators with a larger lifespan than common reef fauna, that being sharks. These modifications included extending MPA's current sharks, and finally recommending larger MPAs for Atlantic sites compared to Pacific sites. Lower sharks in the Atlantic. If these recommendations were implemented, then managers could expect a return of less fishing mortality. The research demonstrates that the current size of marine protected areas is far efficiently conserve large mobile predatory, often the victim of mortality from fishing. Therefore, the movement data collected supports increasing MPA size to dramatically reduce sharks' mortality. Data that MPAs being utilised need to be approximately 1.6 to 2.6 times larger to conserve these mobile predators to a level equal to or greater than other phyllopaths.
Thanks, Brendan. The article being looked at today looks at the individual and population benefits of marine reserves for reef sharks. The data for this was collected through global tracking networks and specific underwater monitoring, which will be touched on later. Conservation of these sharks and other species is becoming more of a priority. As the decline of the species accumulates, these species are threatened with extinction. The evidence comes from the main driver being fisheries. Because of this, the numbers have plummeted. There has been a demand for LUE branch products all through Asian countries. Other reasons being involved that support the evidence are unsustainable fisheries, habitat destruction, illegal practices, and unprecedented bycatch. So unsustainable fisheries imbalance the ecosystem by taking out more fish than the ocean can actually sustain. Habitat destruction involves the loss of destruction of coastal habitats. This can be through destructive fishing, pollution, bottom trawling, and also poisoning. And unprecedented bycatch is involved with overfishing where other species or marine creatures are trapped by commercial fishing nets. The fisheries capture the LUE branch species mainly for their meat and fins. Countries such as China have grown quite the market for LUE branch trade. The demand for these products has landed these species in a lot of trouble, which provides evidence for the decreasing numbers in population. This pushes for the need for marine protected areas. It is a commonly applied tool that protects these species from possible extinction. Marine protected areas have been playing quite a role in conservation, and there has been an increase in them over time on quite a global scale. Through this, we will need to think about scientific concepts such as the ecosystem resilience, which plays a large role in underpinning many species as well as the ecosystem's capacity to continue surviving at a natural state while providing other services such as fisheries, tourism, and lastly, coastal protection. Marine protected areas will be able to provide the correct assistance when it comes to resilience and resistance of these ecological systems, especially when they are older, larger, and well enforced reserves that include many ecosystems. Adapting these newer reserves to this will need to be analysed properly, looking at factors such as biodiversity, the ecological communities, and the long-term protection of certain species. Thank you.
The article supports the idea of the implementation of larger no-take marine protected areas by tracking the movement of sharks with acoustic telemetry and baited remote underwater video surveillance, which is also referred to as BRUVs. From this, predictive individual-based models were created, establishing a basis for the benefits of MPAs for the different species of sharks and in the different locations. The article was published in Current Biology, Volume 30, Issue 3 in February 2020. The journal articles published in Cell Systems are peer-reviewed by the Editor-in-Chief, Quincy Justman, and their group of in-house reviewers. At Cell Systems, the peer review system consists of the determination if the study addresses the objective truths and where its limitations are. Hence, the constructive review determines if the article is valid and whether or not it's done to a high standard. The data received from the analysis of the shark's movements were presented in a tabulated form, where it contained the spatial distance, activity space, and size of the MPA required to protect more than 50% of the tagged sharks of the various species. The article addresses the importance of the numerical data by creating a predictive individual-based model upon which they based their analysis on. For example, the article shows that more mobile species of sharks, such as nurse sharks, require larger MPAs to receive the same amount of protection as those sharks who are more site-attached, such as the white-tip reef sharks. For the uncertainty in the data of the shark's movement, such as the variation in placement, number, extent of acoustic receivers, and size, shape, and degree of isolation of their home reef, the researchers included empirical tracking data for a large number of individual sharks, which was collected across 8 different locations. This reduces the possibility of outliers and increases the precision of the group estimates. The other dataset utilized was the max N values, the maximum individuals of a species in a single frame of video from BRUVs. This dataset was addressed in the written form and contained numerical values in a section of the article. It also included graphs to further support its study. The graphs represented the proportion of activity in the MPA against the MPA size. The analysis of the data of BRUVs concluded that the higher the level of the local abundance of the sharks in the region, the greater the number of individuals that could benefit from an MPA. The uncertainty of the data was acknowledged in the discussion. The data obtained from BRUVs often underestimates the true abundance of the region, especially if the abundance is high. Therefore, the predictions on the individual numbers that receive protection from MPAs will rather be conservative. To account for this, the BRUVs data was converted into an absolute abundance data by simulating a considerable range of BRUVs plume catchment areas as part of the sensitivity analysis.
Thank you, Demetrius. Throughout the article, studies show that majority of marine protected areas around coral reefs are too small to fully protect wildlife, especially the 5 main reef shark species: black-tip reef sharks, white-tip reef sharks, nurse sharks, Caribbean sharks, and grey sharks. Majority of marine protected areas across the globe are not completely well enforced. The main issue that was highlighted in the article explains if you do not protect the places where sharks actually spend their time, then you are not really protecting those sharks. One of the most practical strategies for elasmobranch species conservation is the implementation of marine protected areas. These targeted areas of ocean officially declare termination to fishing, especially shark fishing, with the aim to increase the number of sharks within a boundary. The no-take marine protected areas have become one of the most strategical conservation approaches. More reef shark species can be protected if certain marine protected areas were extended from 10 to 50 kilometers depending on the shark species. This is due to the study that these particular reef sharks do not always inhabit the same area. They may breed or feed in different areas across the reef. One of the most resourceful ways of recording movements and behaviors of reef sharks is through the use of baited remote underwater video stations and biotelemetry. These underwater monitoring and global tracking networks have become largely popular within the marine research and conservation community, with the use of surveying population sizes, tracking individual movements of reef sharks, and gaining important ecological understandings. Implications that this article has in the idea of protecting larger areas of reefs demonstrates the idea that not all research or conservation organisations are truly protecting wildlife, such as these reef sharks. According to the article, recent studies concluded that majority of marine protected areas worldwide cannot guarantee the protection of coral reef sharks unless the implementation of larger marine protected areas is extended for up to a minimum of 50 kilometres of continuous reef habitat. Not only do marine protected areas aid oceanic wildlife, they can benefit terrestrial species through the elimination of human intervention within marine regions, aiding the restoration of oceans and therefore avoiding increased degradation. They provide overall protection of geological terrains, biodiversity, and ecosystems. By extending no-take marine protected areas around the world, the action of this could benefit society by increasing awareness, therefore the movement of global conservation may be amended. With the extension of marine protected areas, it could potentially change the way society both looks and acts towards conservation. Thank you for watching our presentation today.